We begin our story not in a barber shop, but on the turbulent waters of the sea. A ship called the Star has been wrecked, and among the survivors is a man named Lieutenant Thornhill. He has arrived in London carrying a heavy burden of responsibility, a string of immensely valuable pearls. These gems were entrusted to him by a man named Mark who intended them for a woman named Johanna Oakley. But as Thornhill searches for Johanna in the crowded, fog-heavy streets of London, the pearls are not where they should be. A trail of suspicion begins to form, leading away from the docks and toward a small, unassuming shop on Fleet Street. This is the domain of Sweeney Todd, the barber. In this original tale, Todd is not just a man with a sharp razor. He is a predator of immense physical strength and terrifying instincts. He has already begun a cycle of crime to cover up his initial theft of the pearls. He's a man who understands how to manipulate the systems of the city, successfully defrauding a moneylender named John Mundel by posing as a nobleman. But as his crimes grow, so does his need for silence. He begins planning the murder of anyone who might link him to his original sin, turning a simple theft into a much darker pattern of violence. As the investigation into the missing pearls intensifies, we see the emotional weight of the story through Johanna Oakley. She is consumed by grief, believing Mark is lost to the sea. When she encounters the mysterious Lieutenant Thornhill, she begins to wonder if he might actually be Mark in disguise, a hope that keeps her tethered to the unfolding mystery. This discovery sends Tobias into a frantic flight for survival. He is pursued not just by the weight of what he knows, but by men who represent the corruption of the law itself. Two officials, Fogg and Watson, become entangled in the darkness. They are not heroes, they are predators in their own right, planning to murder Tobias to prevent him from testifying about what he has seen. In his flight, Tobias finds refuge with a woman who is herself a victim of systemic familial abuse. She is being hunted by relatives who want to steal her inheritance, and her struggle for survival becomes a central, deeply human thread in this otherwise sensationalist tale. It provides a grounded, domestic horror that mirrors the more urban, theatrical horror of Todd's barbershop. As the plot moves toward its breaking point, the criminal underworld begins to eat itself. Mrs. Lovett, Todd's accomplice, realizes she is not safe. She sees the pattern of Todd's violence and realizes he will eventually turn on her to keep the full profit of the pearls for himself. She attempts to outmaneuver him by using forgery to steal the money, but Todd is always one step ahead. He has already lied to their broker to secure the funds for himself, leaving Mrs. Lovett vulnerable and desperate. While the criminals clash, the law finally begins to move. Sir Richard Blunt, a man of order and steady purpose, realizes that Todd is too slippery for a standard arrest. He begins to orchestrate a trap, using his influence to manipulate ship schedules and offering a false sense of security to keep Todd in London, preventing his escape. The tension reaches a fever pitch as Todd descends into a state of paranoia and mania. He is no longer just a thief, he is a man losing his grip on reality. He prepares his shop for a massive arson, intending to burn everything to the ground to erase the evidence of his life's work. He even goes so far as to drug and kill a man who has been spying on him, but the walls are closing in from every direction. Eventually, the law catches up to him. Todd is arrested and sent to the notorious Newgate prison. Even in prison, he remains a force of chaos. In a moment of unexpected alliance, he finds himself sharing a cell with the Reverend Josiah Lupin, a former thief who knows the secrets of the prison's architecture. Using nothing but files and a chisel, the two men break through the prison walls, staging a desperate and violent escape. The story culminates in a high-stakes chase through the winding, dark streets of London. Todd, once a calculated and predatory barber, is now a frantic, animalistic fugitive. The pursuit ends when Sir Richard Blunt and his officers finally intercept him. In the chaos of the struggle, Todd is thrown from his horse and dies from his internal injuries, his reign of terror ending in the very streets he once dominated. With the villain gone, the narrative moves toward a restoration of order. Johanna and Mark are reunited, the stolen pearls are recovered, and the corrupt officials, Fogg and Watson, are finally brought to justice. The string of pearls is no longer a symbol of greed and death, but a legacy of survival. When we look back at this story, it's interesting to consider why it resonated so deeply in the mid-19th century. The tale is a perfect example of the fatal object trope, where an item, in this case the pearls, acts as a catalyst for both romantic devotion and murderous greed. The pearls represent the dual nature of wealth in a rapidly industrializing London. They are something that can bring people together in love, or tear them apart through violence. The story also works because it balances different types of horror. You have the urban horror of the barber shop, the idea of a killer hiding in plain sight in a busy, crowded city, and then you have the domestic horror of the subplot involving the woman being abused by her own family. By weaving these together, the authors created a sense that danger isn't just something lurking in a dark alley, it's something that can exist in a parlor or a boardroom. There is also a profound sense of the cycle of crime. The narrative shows how one crime necessitates another. Todd steals the pearls, which necessitates the murder of the witnesses, which necessitates the corruption of the officials, which necessitates the betrayal of his own partners. It's a downward spiral that shows how greed, once unleashed, becomes a self-sustaining engine of destruction. Historically, it's worth noting that while Sweeney Todd became a legend, there is very little evidence that a real barber by that name ever existed on Fleet Street. The character is a product of the Penny Dreadful era, a time when the rapid growth of London created a sense of social instability and anxiety. People wanted stories that reflected the fears of a changing world, where the old social orders were being disrupted and crime seemed to be lurking behind every door. Ultimately, The String of Pearls is more than just a sensationalist thriller. It's a story about the tension between chaos and order. It shows a world where the law is often as predatory as the criminals it pursues, but it also insists that, eventually, the truth will surface and the balance will be restored. The pearls are returned, the lovers are reunited, and the darkness of Fleet Street is pushed back into the shadows.